Well, hello there, my friends. Welcome back, and boy, do I have some shiny vampire action for you today. The Red Duke rides again, astride his resplendent Zombo Hellsteed here in the Southern Chaos Waste, where the Zanganaz will take their fight to Tretch Craventail and the Skaven. Graveguard and Cryptors are the infantry component, nothing too crazy there, but I do want to talk a little bit about Black Knights. So obviously, they're not even close to being the best knights in the game in terms of raw killing power, but they're really good against some factions from a pure cost efficiency standpoint, right? Against factions like Skaven or Lizardmen, who really like to field those annoying slingers, gutter runners, or chameleon skinks. You can put a lot of pressure on their backline and their range units without much of an investment on your part, because they're really cheap to field. Fell bats to tie stuff down, Black Knights to come in and wreak havoc, and prevent units from rallying, which is especially important against the Skaven, because they're designed to break and rally, and just grind you down over time. But they can't do that if their low leadership units never come back to the fight, because Black Knights are styling on them. So we can harass these slingers out here on the flank pretty easy with the fell bats, do a little bit of early skirmishing, force those rat ogres out of position a bit, and just give our cavalry some time to scoot out to the flanks and rear of the enemy army. And while I do think Skaven are one of the stronger, maybe one of the strongest factions in the game, as we know, their leadership is a bit wonky, so fielding cheap, fast units that cause fear and have a bit of survivability, that's a lot of tools in your toolbox against a horde faction like the Raki. But they do have a very powerful rush army in this one, lots of AP, lots of numbers, but we do have the Blood Knights on the field, and they can be a great choice against the Rat Ogres, and just for running down pretty much anything. I mean, you get a hammer and anvil with them on a Raki line, and they're going to be running for the hills in seconds. So we're trying to close the gap here. Of course, the Skaven are going to be trying to get into melee as well. They have a rush army. You saw the Plague Monk Censor Bears. You saw the Rat Ogres. You saw the Storm Vermin. Not a ton of range units on the field. And the Rat Ogres are looking to get some early action in here now and get rid of those meat shields with their RKOs out of nowhere, smashing into the zombie line. And I really like that move, because the sooner you can get rid of the zombies, get them crumbling, the better. The easier it'll be for you to make contact with those Graveguard and get your important units into those. Put it into slow motion. You can see in the top left, there are Death Runners behind my line and some Warp Fire Throwers shooting their sticky, icky green goo at Mr. Red Duke, which isn't ideal. But we do have the Fell Bats ready to go in and shut them down. And then the Black Knights can come in from the flank, shut down the Slingers or the Warp Fire Throwers. So we've got a lot of mobility here, and we have these Skaven armies surrounded, which is important. It's a good way to deal with them, right? Again, low leadership means you can manipulate that with the rear charges, manipulate their morale, cause the fear, cause the terror, cause some chain routing, which is what we want to try to do here. Cryptors tried to bait him to retreat with the Warp Fire Throwers, didn't work, but the Fell Bats now get into melee, tie them down, raise some zombies, and now those Warp Fire Throwers are going nowhere fast, surrounded by the Black Knights, who can now actually go into the Slingers, because we don't need to charge them into the Warp Fire Throwers, they're tied down. Silence those Slingers, and then look to maybe get some hammer and anvils off. In the back here, the Death Runners trying to get a little bit fancy doing that Vanguard deployment, that stalk, and that can be a big game changer for you if it works, but it is always going to be a risky proposition. If they leave cavalry in their back lines and they see the Death Runners, they're gonna die. They cannot take a cavalry charge, they will melt off it, and the Blood Knights are gonna have a field day back there against those little assassins from Clan Ashen. And right here, you'll see this is exactly, again, how you want to use infantry with monstrous infantry. Use them in tandem with each other. Use the infantry to block the charge of the enemy, and then support them with the monstrous infantry, and Cryptors will smash apart Clan Rats in the center. But there are a bunch of Storm Vermin and Plague Monk Censor Bears waiting in reserve, and once they get into melee, the tide will start to turn, because they are certainly better than any of the infantry the Vampire Counts currently have on the field. Nice rear charge from the Black Knights here after finishing off those Slingers, going into the back of some more Clan Rats, working with the Fell Bats. But here come the Censor Bears, and that is not a fight Black Knights want to stick around in. That AP will absolutely destroy them if they stick around. Meanwhile, Vampires trying to push through on the Skaven left flank, as Mr. Red Duke drops a big Invocation of the Heck on a lot of those infantry units in the main engagement. Blood Knights had an absolute field day here, a carnival running down those Death Runners, and the Warlock Engineer trying to buff up, augment all the Skaven units in the center there. Black Knights are free, did take some damage from the Censor Bears as they charged in from the flank. They're going to be okay, and Black Knights coming in, kind of being used like the monstrous infantry, charging in from behind. Kind of a lazy charge there. Honestly, not going to do a whole lot as Tretch Craventail drops a big Verminous Valor to get some zombos off him. The Red Duke can now go in and silence that Warlock Engineer. Debuff him with Elseef, lower his physical resistance, lower his speed, and just slaughter him And yeah, that Warlock Engineer is not going to want to stay in that combat for long if he can escape. But that's what's so amazing about El Saif and what makes him such a great choice, the Red Duke, is that you can't really run away from him if he decides to go for you. You just have to weather the storm as Black Knights come in from behind and slaughter those slingers that were isolated out on the flank. And that's an instance where gutter runners would be much better, get them on skirmish mode and run away and get that Parthian shot as they run away. That'd be much better than just sitting there and taking that nasty charge from behind. But those slingers are going to be run down here, but the Censer Bears are committing and they are going to reap a terrible toll here on the main line. A little bit blobby on both sides as the Rat Ogre, Storm Vermin, and Censer Bears get into the thick of the fighting, but the cavalry is free, and that's important. Because for a faction like Skaven, who rely on being able to break and then send their units back into the fight, they don't have cavalry to protect their routing units. So when Black Knights are free in your back line, and your Clan Rats and your Slave Rats and whatever are routing, Rat Ogres even, how do you prevent Black Knights, a very cheap 700 gold unit, from going in and preventing that 900 gold unit from rallying? You can't. And now Blood Knights are free to shut down the Slingers, or the Warp Fire Throwers, both of them even, as they charge through, and more sticky, icky green goo going flying. I love that aesthetic. It's so beautiful to see that. Beautiful contrast between the green and the red there. But big charge into the Slingers. They're going to rout Warp Fire Throwers already on their last legs, about to be run down. And Black Knights preventing Rat Ogres from coming back into the fight. And having that cavalry free in the back line is just so important if you're the Vampire Counts. You can just easily field 2 or 3 of those Black Knights and prevent all these units from coming back into the fight. And now that means they have to win on the main line, which is honestly not impossible for this game to do. They have a fantastic infantry corps. I mean, again, Plague Censer Bears, Storm Vermin, and if they decide to, they can bring summons. But right now, none of that is able to cycle back into the fight. And the Black Knights and Blood Knights, that awesome combination of Vampire Counts cavalry, making their presence felt all over the battlefield. And Wallach Harkin's Brood coming in now. And this is going to get dirty. This is going to get real nasty, shattering those poor Ratmen with a charge from behind. Utterly shish kebabbed. And the front line is now in disarray. Rat Ogres running for the hills. Censer Bears are in combat. And they should, I mean, even isolated, even by themselves, they would be able to take on Graveguard, no problem. They take a lot of damage because they're squishy themselves. And obviously Graveguard do have that bonus for infantry. But the AP from them, I mean, Censer Bears are scary. They're scary for most infantry units to fight. So much damage that they can dish out. But it's not going to help them when Cryptors and Graveguard are working in tandem and all that Vampire Count cavalry is coming back and looking to put the final nail in the coffin for the Thagaraki here. And yeah, this is going to get real brutal. Another rear charge. I guess actually the Plague Censer Bears turn around to charge back. Good move there. They will actually be able to dish out some pretty serious damage. Not off the charge, but once the combat starts getting a little bit more prolonged, they'll definitely be able to do a lot of damage to those Blood Knights. But it doesn't matter. Rat Ogres getting some punches in as the game winds up here. But yeah, the Skaven are not going to be able to bring this one back from the brink. So, yeah, as we see the Black Knights, I mean, they made a big impact on this game. I really like them in tandem with the Fell Bats. If you're going to be going up against the Skaven, if you're going to be going up against the Lizardmen, I would say Wood Elves, but unfortunately they have Wild Riders, and they would absolutely slaughter your Black Knights. But really, any faction that doesn't have an amazingly fast or powerful cavalry presence, but relies on those skirmish units to do a lot of their damage. When we say Skaven, well, even in the Chameleon Skinks department there, I guess they aren't really designed to do damage, right? But they're designed to be really annoying and kite you and do damage even to your cavalry units when you try to run them down. And that's what Black Knights are good for. You don't want to be sending your Dragon Princes. You don't want to be sending your Blood Knights after Gutter Runners, after Chameleon Skinks. Like, you're just going to take some damage on them that you really don't need to take. They're going to be able to scoot and shoot and get away from you with their snares and their poison and all that. It's going to be really annoying. You just don't want to deal with that. Instead, you can send Black Knights and the Fell Bats, which combined is 10,050 gold. 10,000. 1,050 gold, which isn't that much of an investment to shut down all the range units on an enemy line. And basically just tie them up, annoy them. If a Chameleon Skinks Lizardmen especially, and I'm talking about Lizardmen a lot here because they're so annoying and so prevalent in the meta right now. If you just invest a little bit there to shut down their range, now push them back, then you're in good shape. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you got any requests for theme builds or anything, let me know in the comment section below. I'll see you next time. Any Pride? Signing out for now.